Hi, my name is Tiffani Weberg, and I am one of your student TAs this quarter. I am a second year at UC Davis, and my major is cognitive science, computational. Some of my background with coding is when I was in high school as a senior, I took AP Computer Science Principles, and then I completed the ECS 32A programming course before taking ECS 32B, which I've now completed ECS 32B. So with that experience, it took me on average about 5 to 40 hours per homework assignment. 40 was the max, and that was for our biggest assignment. And then 5 were for some of the, I guess, easier assignments. Not really easy, but, I don't know. It took less time, that's all I'll say. This, it may seem like a lot, but all of this time isn't necessarily spent just writing the code. A lot of it is invested into debugging your code and going over your code, planning out what you want to write, talking with professors and TAs, getting help. So not all of it is coding itself. A lot of it is just what goes into writing the code and getting it all completed. So it really depends on how much time you're willing to invest. I would definitely recommend investing as much as you can because you will get the most for your work and your time. The hours do depend, like I said, varying on the intensity of the assignment. Reading assignments, however, took me anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. Depends on the length of the reading assignments. They're interactive though, so it doesn't it's not boring, I guess I could say, because they keep you going. Now, the quizzes took anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours. That also depends on the difficulty of the quiz and your knowledge of the subject. Utilizing the readings can really help you with the quizzes and the assignments. So if you follow the readings, the quizzes may be faster for you if you are following all of the course load and everything, but again, it depends on the quiz and on your the time that you're willing to invest in it. So some important and helpful things that I learned over the quarter. The most important ones I would say are definitely learning to use the debugger as a top. That can save you a lot of time in writing your code because if you just sit there and stare at your code and try and figure out what's not working, that'll just waste your time because a lot of times you won't figure out what's wrong. Debugging is the key to figuring out most problems. Also learning PyCharm. PyCharm has a lot of helpful features that will save you a lot of time, and just knowing the platform you're writing your code on is very helpful. If you plan on working with partners, and even if you aren't, learning to use Git and GitHub is definitely worth your time. It's very helpful with making sure that your code is saved and you can have multiple different versions of your code. So learning Git and GitHub, very helpful. Unit tests. Learning about unit tests and how to write them, how to use them, will save you a lot of time. Testing your own code helps you build confidence in your code, and it helps you locate errors early on rather than waiting until later on to see that this minor error could have been fixed if you used a unit test to test it early on. Another helpful thing is to use good and meaningful variable and function names. It may take you a bit longer sometimes to write them, but having clear and meaningful names can help you understand what your code does, especially if you come back to it later. It also helps other people looking at your code to understand what it does. And if you don't use good variable names or function names, it can trip you up later when trying to reference them. Also, PyCharm has an autofill for so if you write a really long function name and you reference it somewhere else, it can autofill it in for you, so you really only have to write the name once, which is very helpful. Another important thing is don't become overly attached to your code. Be willing to change it, erase it, and even just scrap the whole thing and start over, because it can save you time to know that you're not completely attached to doing things a certain way, especially if that way is not the most optimal way and is not what's going to work best. Just all depends. So my secrets to success would definitely be don't procrastinate. That's the top one. Assignments can take a long time, and Butner allots you usually a week and a half to 2 weeks per assignment. And you definitely, for the most part, need all of that time, especially if you have other courses going on, because, you know, you have time for those ones, but you need to be able to dedicate those 5 to 40 hours over those 1.5 to 2 weeks. And you want to spend that time to understand the problem, write, debug, and get help with your code, so that can take up your time. Another thing is you want to be an active learner. You don't just do the readings to, you know, get the points, follow them, because Butner will discuss those topics in class, and it is a lot more helpful to have followed the readings well and understand the interactive parts when he goes over it in class, so that you are like, oh, I know what he's talking about, and I know which questions I have based on that reading, and oh, I can answer these questions that he's asking. So it's just really helpful to be an active learner and participator in class. So that goes with, and when you're in class, if you have questions about certain topics, do not be afraid to answer them or ask them, because getting your questions answered early on will be the best way to get them answered, and it'll help you not worry about it later on if you got the questions you had answered right away. Also, when you are writing code and you're working and if you work with other people, don't look at other people's code or code online for answers. You can look online for ways to write certain types of code if, like, you know, you can find pseudocode and other things to help you if you're trying to think about it. Butner recommends it as one of the ways to help you. But, you know, don't rely on it, because once you look at other code and you see how to do something, it is a lot harder and almost near impossible for you to now think of how to write that code yourself, because you've now seen the answer, and so it's not helping you to generate answers to your own problems. So also with that, plan out what you want to do before you do it. Now, I know a lot of people like to just jump right into their code, but having a clear plan of how to solve the problem, and what classes should be there and how the classes should interact, will save you guys a lot of time on your projects, and it will be worth the time investment. When you jump right into your code, it's actually one of the worst things you can do, because it can slow your process down a lot, because you get really confused as to what you're doing because you didn't think it all through, and then you write confusing code, which can make it a little more difficult for us to help you and navigate your code. So best thing to do is to plan things out, say it out loud, hear what you're saying, and invest your time in planning. With that, you want to get to know your instructors and TAs. There's a lot of help that we can provide you, and we want to see you succeed, so we're here to help. That's our job. So just don't be afraid to ask questions. Come to office hours. With assignments being 1.5 to 2 weeks, I've seen plenty of open seats during the first week of office hours. When I'd go in, there's so much room, the TAs have so much time, sometimes they're sitting there waiting to help someone, but then when it's the 2 or 3 days before the assignment's due, they are filled, and it can be lists as long as 15 people long, and you can wait a long time to get help, because everyone is in there waiting. Now, that's not to discourage you from coming. Please still come to office hours. We will answer your questions. We will get to you. But just know that going early on is the best way to get as much help as possible, because there are a lot of people in the class and a lot of people will need help. So I think that's everything that I have to say. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me or any of the other TAs or Butner. And it is possible to get an A in this class, so don't stress too much, but also, don't underestimate the difficulty of the course, because it is hard and it is time consuming. So I recommend taking about 3 courses this quarter if you can, and being prepared to dedicate a lot of time to this. Good luck.